So what's going on?
Productive morning, and even though I've got a ton done, I found some time to watch some World Cup, and I'm playing around with the new texture steaming technique for my lattes. That of all places, I picked up from a Instagram reel. So
Okay.
I'm trying a different way of steaming the milk, and I'm liking the output. So
Nice, nice.
yeah, what about you?
Yeah, just a productive day. We're recording on a Friday. We normally do this midweek.
I didn't have a
Um,
voice, so we had to delay.
yeah, no biggie. And I'm actually thinking about maybe we move this to Friday afternoons or something. I don't know. I'm debating, because
Wednesdays. I mean, it's a pro and a con because Wednesdays are hell for me. I don't know how else to put it. And
the same for me.
the
Yeah.
podcast tends to be like the one. Okay, I can just have some fun and
Mhm.
decompress a bit, but also maybe an hour free on a very hellish day might not be a bad thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So I mean, to be transparent, we're recording this in the middle of December. With the holidays coming up, uh, it'll debut in January. So, um, for those listening, we during the pre-show time, we were actually talking about it. We're in 2023 planning at this
yeah.
point, taking the time in December when client work seems to slow down, client requests seem to slow down. I know clients who are already on vacation, so taking this time and closing out stuff from the current year and prepping for the next year.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been on my mind is how do I structure my time to be the most productive? And it's actually a skill I learned from John several years ago, or one of the skills I learned from John was guarding my calendar.
Mm,
Because for a large portion of my career, up until about 6 years ago or so, someone put a meeting on my calendar. I'm like, yep, I'll be there. Unless there was like a hard conflict, if someone put a meeting on my calendar, I'd automatically accept.
it's weird how we've developed that belief that, oh, someone sent me a meeting request. Well, I have
I
to
have to
accept it.
go.
I have to go.
Yeah.
No, you don't. Not by default.
Yeah. And how I approach it has changed and evolved over the years. But I have become very, very guarded and I've become structured about my week. So Fridays is no meeting Friday. Um, there are very few exceptions. I will say there are very few exceptions, but a lot of times I will have meetings on Friday if say something comes up earlier in the week and it's urgent to get it done. Um, there was a situation last week where I had a couple meetings scheduled on Thursday, and I had a personal situation come up, so I couldn't be there Thursday. So I broke my own rule because I had to move the meetings. Like I'm the one who had to move the meetings. So I'm like, if people are open to it, let's meet on Friday. But other than that, it's a very hard and fast rule. No meetings Fridays, no meetings Thursday afternoons. But I am looking at my calendar and like my Wednesdays have always been my heavy meeting days. But to your point, it's become crazy. Like there are times like I'll have 6 hours of meetings
Yeah.
on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And by the
Same.
end of the day, I'm fried.
Yeah.
And even halfway through the day, like I start to become less productive in those meetings. So it's how do I make my time even more productive? So taking it to the next step where I guard my calendar, but then really picking and choosing the meetings I'm in. And even the ones where you say, you know what, I'll join and listen in and I'll just multitask. No, like I'm not going to join. Like if I'm not needed there, if it's like we would like you to be there, but you don't have to be there, then I'm not going to be there.
Yeah.
That sounds like being an asshole, but I think that's a way of being productive.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think being protective of your calendar and just thinking critically about, do I need to be there? Am I going to add value being there? Then
Mhm.
it just creates a lot of focus and a lot of being able to say no in a healthy way to having an overly scheduled calendar for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah. So that's where we're at, and yeah, I've got another 2 weeks I'm going to spend really thinking through it, and this way get a lot of this thinking out of the way now. So after coming back from the holiday break, being fresh, having a chance to clear my mind, but I have all of those thoughts written down. So, when I come back, I don't have to remember where did I leave off or what was I thinking about and trying to bring all of that back. I
Yeah.
have all of that out of my head.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm trying to do the same. So, and plus, we've been there where we haven't done that. And when you come back from break, before you know it, it's February. It's like, wait, we lost an entire month and haven't
Hmm.
really gotten started yet on
Yeah.
things. So, definitely helps to be prepared to. I don't even want to say it. Hit the ground running in, in January. So,
You know what I need? I need like to add something to StreamYard that like a little sound that plays every time we have a every time we mention a little business cliche.
did you watch the DHL Digital Analytics Summit?
I watched parts of it. Yes.
So I don't know if it was what did I buy you? A Stream Deck? What
Yeah.
was that thing called?
Yeah.
Stream Deck?
Got it right here.
Uh,
Um,
so Frederick during the event had, I don't know if it was a Stream Deck or something similar,
with some
but
similar device.
some
Yes, I saw
similar
that.
device, and he was playing like audio clips, and it was just it was just awesome. Kind of
Yeah.
added to the overall feel of it. You,
I'm
you
gonna
need
I'm
to
gonna
you
put
need
that
to
on my
do
list.
that.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that on my list and actually like load up StreamYard with it, and then I could program the buttons on the Stream Deck
Yeah,
to make those sounds.
yeah, if you could do
Like try to think of like a stupid noise to make every time we say something like, we're gonna shift some paradigms, but we'll circle back to it, in the new year.
just as long as we don't try to boil the ocean on that one, I think we'll be okay.
Just let's put a pin in it for right now and actually get to our topic.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
But yeah, actually, I think that's a perfect point to move on to our topic. So, in our last episode, we had Stephen and Ashley Marshall on with us, and we had several things we wanted to talk about, and one we just didn't get to because the conversation just it was that there was more content than time.
I mean, we could have gone on for like 6 hours, I think.
Yeah. So we are having them back in a couple weeks. Um, but Steven said something that stuck with me, and it was on the topic of story and storytelling. He said story is the glue for new information and facts. Um, it made me really start to think about the concept of storytelling. So I want to start a series of episodes around the theme of storytelling.
Mm,
What is it? How does it apply to certain areas of our space specifically, of business in general, and just in life? Um, so Merriam-Webster defines story as one, an account of incidents or events, and two, a statement regarding the facts pertinent to a situation in question. So that is the dry academic definition of it. But when to get mention like that's what that's how they define story. But if you really start to think about it and contemplate it, storytelling is a very powerful part of the human experience and a key tool used throughout human history. Um, if you go back and you study ancient history, um, things were told and history was communicated through stories.
hmm
You had the elders of a community that would retell the stories over and over. So history was communicated through story. Um, Today, um, the part a key thing with any kind of experience is story, and we're gonna get into to individuals because I was about to talk about something, but I'm actually stopping myself from talking about it. But ultimately, what it does and why it's so powerful is that it provides a level of familiarity. And when it's used effectively, it conveys information in a way that deeply resonates with all involved.
Do you have any stories that you can share with our audience of when you had a mustache? Because I think you could grow a glorious mustache.
No, I've never done the mustache. I've always had either the full beard or the goatee.
Man, it's looking good.
My dad rocked the mustache really well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great topic, and especially coming off our conversation with the Marshalls, which was an incredible conversation. They're actually I think going to be out in Utah when this episode I think airs, for a storytelling festival in Park City. Um, it is such a powerful thing. Um, if you, I shouldn't plug my own session, but if you listen to my session at the DHL conference, I talked a lot about the importance of being novel, being entertaining, being memorable, especially when we're talking about things that to us are exciting. But think about the broader business where we're droning on about statistical significance and this mathematical calculations and mapping data to variables in Google Analytics. It's incredibly boring to most people, right? And I think back, just think back through your educational history. We've all taken a lot of topics that for most of us could be pretty boring, and the teachers that have been able to take that and wrap story around it to make it entertaining, that it's okay, not only okay, it's actually a way in which we can learn better by engaging us through something incredibly engaging. I can't use engaging,
Yeah.
incredibly entertaining to learn things about. And I think a lot about the topic of negotiation strategy. um, it could be incredibly dry. Speaking of Seinfeld, which I was watching as we were queuing up this episode, there was the episode where George is supposed to give a presentation on risk management strategy, and he gets the book on no, he gets the audio book for it, and it's just like in his own. It's actually him reading it in his own voice, but just like very like man monotonous and droning on. It's like I don't want to sit and listen to this. And I think about
Mhm.
the book Never Split the Difference. It is such an incredibly entertaining, memorable book because he's taken a subject that can be incredibly dry and made it so engaging and entertaining. I think I read the entire book in less than 2 days. I couldn't put it down. A
Yeah.
book on negotiation strategy.
Yeah, because he brings in stories from his past to make what he is saying, which is very dry fact in some cases, or to kind of um, reinforce the skills that he's walking you through. And it's great that you bring up negotiation, because on this particular episode, I want to specifically look at sales,
Mm,
and storytelling and sales. Um, because it was several years ago. I was in a pre-sales engineer role, and I had always seen sales as within that role as you just go through and you show the features. Oh, this button does this and this button does that. And I was working with someone who spent the time and like, no, like you need to wrap a story around it. You don't just show every button, because not every feature is applicable. Do your research ahead of time. Find out what their key use cases are, and then craft a narrative around how those features apply to them. And it was like it was one of those epiphany moments in my career. It's like, dumbass, like after the fact, it seems like incredibly obvious.
yeah.
And those people throughout my career that have been successful in sales, whether it's retail sales, B2B sales, they know how to craft a story.
Yeah, and I think we've all sat in at some point in our career a demo or a sales call where they were just droning on and on and on about features, and this is, and it is so incredibly boring, and it could be something incredibly interesting and positive that we're very interested in, but the way that it's presented, you're just sitting there like looking at your watch like, is this thing almost over yet? Like I can't drag this on anymore any longer. The very best ones that I've sat in on, yeah, have taken that approach of we're here to entertain. And it's okay to accept that. I think the reason why so many people shy away from it is they feel like if we put that entertainment factor on what we're doing, it diminishes the fact that there's actual substance to what we're doing, which
Mhm.
I think is a fair concern because we've seen our fair share of sales and marketers that, you know, tell a really great story, get people super excited, but then you pull back the covers a little bit and you're like, wait a minute, there's nothing here. And so I definitely get people's worry and concern that they're just kind of putting window dressing on a vacant building. But the fact is that when you have substance and you have something incredibly valuable that you want to share, thinking about it from a entertainment storytelling perspective actually increases your ability that your audience is going to engage and actually understand what it is that you are trying to get across in your message. So um I think that's a fear a lot of us, myself included, have to get over, because I've definitely thought about that, whether I'm putting together a document or I'm meeting with a prospect. Like, maybe I shouldn't make this so entertaining, because it's going to take away from what I'm sharing. But it's actually the opposite. And when you have substance there, it just makes it so much more powerful.
Yeah. And it also, to my point earlier about familiarity, it shows that you're familiar with who you're talking to. Years ago, we were on sitting in, and this was before my time at 33 Sticks. This was another company. We were sitting in with a client on a sales call from a marketing vendor, and you could tell they did no homework. It was just a spray and pray kind of call. And they started going through like use cases and trying to tell a story about when your customers add to cart and when they do this and when they do that. And we're like, they're not e-commerce, they're lead gen. And like it's a lead gen site. There's no cart, there's no transaction. So immediately, like, there was no level of familiarity, and you could tell it was just some generic demo that they set up, and we're just trying to run through.
Yeah, and I think that highlights the importance that storytelling, creating that entertainment factor, can't be done in isolation of having done your prep, your homework, providing a meaningful message. And again, I think that that's either the path that too many people go down, thinking, well, I can be entertaining. It doesn't matter if I'm just bullshitting. It is a
Mhm.
problem. And it also addresses the people's concerns that actually do have something valuable to share, and worry that making it entertaining devalues what it is that they're sharing. You absolutely have to come prepared. Do your homework, and make sure that you're actually presenting something of meaning, because I've seen it too. We've seen this recent trend, maybe not recent, maybe the past few years, with email marketing, where people are trying to be entertaining, but they're doing it without having done their homework. And so it just comes across as incredibly, I'm almost embarrassed for them, right? But take that same approach and have done your homework and tailor the message and make it entertaining. Just think how hard that would hit, right? But we can't do that. It doesn't scale. It's like, maybe the things that you say can't scale should be a challenge for you to try to scale the unscalable, because these things work, right? And maybe you can't scale it to the same volume, but you're going to get higher conversion. You're going to get more buy-in. The people that are attracted to your message are going to be, and we're talking from a sales perspective, more likely to buy from you. So what's the difference if I couldn't scale this to 10,000 people that weren't going to buy from me? Maybe I only scale it to 100, but 5 of them buy from me. Isn't that better?
Yeah, and aside from, like, the excuse that it can't scale, what pushes people to just have something generic? Not focusing on the story that they're trying to tell with the product. And I'm not trying to give away my next question after this, but let's talk about that for a second. Like, what is the draw for people just to have something generic? And like I said earlier, several years ago, many years ago in my career, I thought a demo was just like, just show all the features. Don't you see what these features do?
Well, I think you answered this question in the green room before the show, where you were talking about, do I show up to this meeting and multitask? Just think at how many different things are distracting our attention. And if nothing else, if I can't be entertaining, I can't hook you with something that's going to engage you in what I'm talking about, chances are, Jim's mind is off in another direction. Man, I really need to go and do that. So if nothing else, just sitting down and running through the demo, showing the features is simply not going to be good enough because our audience is incredibly distracted. They're working from home, they're working in the office, and they've got their laptop up, and they're loading up videos on TikTok on their phone while they're monitoring and sending emails on their lap. There's so many things that are just gnawing for our attention that if I'm in there trying to sell, if I'm in there trying to demo some new software, and I'm not doing it in a way in which I'm trying to entertain, man, unless the product is the most incredible, earth-shattering product in the entire universe, then our ability to engage an audience that is so easily distracted is going to be incredibly difficult.
Mhm. Yeah. So, do you know who some of the best salespeople are that incorporate story?
Former actors, I don't know.
A lot of times, car salesmen.
Mm,
Think about it. What is the one tactic when you're there for a car and you're on the fence? What do they do?
I don't know. I haven't bought a car in a long time.
Take you for a test drive.
Yes,
Come on
yes.
in. Don't you see yourself? Like, come on, let's go take it for a test drive. Here
Mm.
are the keys. Come on, get in here. Let me just show you a couple things. Okay, you have this car. A couple things have been moved over here, but
Picture
yeah,
yourself.
exactly. They do that.
Yeah.
It's like, think about yourself driving. Oh, you said you have a kid. Look at this feature. Or, like, think of this, think of that. So you're ready for some podcast inception?
Okay.
Um, I was just thinking of a story to tell. And it was back right before summer started. I bought a new truck.
Yes, you
Um,
did.
I did. And the truck I had before I had for like 10 years. And it was before I had a family and, just had the little jump seats in the back. And when we first got married, it was fine. And then when the kiddo came along, I was like, okay, I need to start thinking about something, getting something new. And I was able to use it for a while, fit the car seat in there, but like it could only be me and my son or me and my wife in there. Like all three of us couldn't go anywhere because with the car seat in there, the passenger seat was all the way up. And even as he was starting to get a bit bigger, being in, having the car seat and the jump seat was becoming less and less safe. So I knew I needed to get something. I just happened to go take my car in for inspection. And I was like, let's go see what they have on the lot. And they had one that was like perfect. It had everything. And again, it was the minute we got into the test drive, it's like I'm driving like, oh, this feels good. This is nice. I like where these things have come in 10 years. He's like, yeah, think about this, think about that. You got the full bench in the back now. You could do this, as your son gets older, you could take him and friends places. He put me right into a story.
Yeah.
I could immediately, like, with some of the other features, I'm like, oh, this is perfect for family road trips. We could do this, we could do that. It's got a roof rack. So between the bed and the roof rack, we could take all the stuff with us. And it sucks you in. So if you think about it, like a really, really good uh car, person who sells cars, they know how to put you right into the story. And so if we flip that to say our space specifically in sales, if you're working in digital analytics, you're working in services around that, you're working in marketing technology, if you really want to hook someone, think of a story that you could tell them that would put them right into the mindset of using the tool.
So two things, and I'm going to come back to that one. But you're absolutely right on the car thing because once you brought it up, I instantly thought of the story in my head. When I bought my Jeep, I remember the guy's like, "Let's take it for a test drive," and we pulled out onto Main Street. But I think he purposefully pointed us towards the mountain, and he said, "Okay, now imagine you're driving this. You can see the mountain. Like you pull off, this thing can go on the dirt, so you don't even need to be around the rest of the public that's up there at the parking lot. You can go find your own little destination up there in the mountain and." Maybe you like make a little fire and hang out. How amazing! I'm like, yeah, let's go back out and sign the papers. Like, let's do this thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, on it's even more true on kind of what we're trying to sell. And I've been part of sales calls in the past where I didn't know that I could do sales. Where the salespeople were talking about now think about how cool this is. We have like 50 EVARs that you can map this data to. So we have EVARs and props and like you're gonna throw this code on your page. I'm like, this is so dull and boring and doesn't make sense, right? And especially to executives that are like, what the hell are you guys talking about? So the ability to abstract that, not dumb it down, again, not focus on the substance, but find a way to communicate with your audience through story in a way that what you're trying to sell is going to resonate with them. It is such a critical part of what I do, doing sales for 33 Sticks, is that predominantly the people that I'm selling to aren't necessarily the people that I hand off to Jim and team to do the work. And so they're typically abstracted a couple levels above that. And if I were to get down in the weeds and start talking about like all these technical details around how we do analysis and how we structure A/B testing, they're going to be so incredibly bored. And they're like, how much longer do I have to talk to Jason? Because this is so dull. But if I can create meaningful story around it, how it's going to be transformative for their team, how their team's going to be so much happier, and they're going to be able to, do all these really fun and memorable things, all of a sudden it's a completely different conversation. They're engaged, they're excited, they want to buy, right? Because now it's something incredibly meaningful and exciting to them. And that can be hard to do with subjects like this, where again, these details are exciting to us, but to most people it's pretty boring.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. But the thing is when you use story effectively, you don't need to tell and talk about 50 features.
Right.
You need to pick three. Pick three key things that are important to your prospect that your tool does, and put them in the driver's seat of it, how it'll solve their problem. And not just solve their problem in like in a dry way, but like something that they could like, oh, that would be great. Think about it this way. Like, yes, our tool, what sounds more appealing? Our tool has a real-time connection to the REST API of your CRM, and we can send X number of files per hour and X number of records at a time. Or yes, we're able to have a live connection into your email program where we can send cart abandonment data every hour. So within the same day, you can send an email to customers that have abandoned products in cart with a promo to get them to come back.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
more
it's
appealing?
night and day difference, right?
Yeah,
But so many default to that first one. And I think I don't want to call it lazy because I get in trouble when I call salespeople lazy. But let's be honest, a lot of sales people, whether it's biz dev, SDR, or sales execs, are lazy. They're just trying to do the bare minimum and crank as many people through their funnel so a few will fall out. And they're just not willing to put in the work needed to customize that in an entertaining way. And it doesn't have to be difficult. I'm not talking about doing 50 hours of research. Just carve out a little time to do something meaningful. And by the way, your recommendation on the 3 items, that you lifted that, you stole that straight out of Bob Iger's masterclass.
I did. Yeah,
Right,
I
because
did.
he talked about it when he was being considered to be initially the CEO of Disney. He talked about his strategy for going to the board, and he had like this list of 30 things, like I'm going to do all this stuff. And I can't remember his friend within
One of his mentors.
one of
We
his
talked about
mentors.
mentors previously.
Yeah, it
One of
was.
his mentors said, "You're going to bore the shit out of the board."
Yeah, he told him that, right?
Yeah,
He's like, you got to boil this down to just a few items and make it really incredibly entertaining. Otherwise, like these people are going to be bored and they're not going to want to pick you.
yeah. No, I did. And so, a quick aside, quick tangent. There are three great master classes to watch. You already mentioned Chris Voss.
Mm-hmm.
You think the book is great.
Masterclass is
The
great.
the master class takes it to the next level. My
Yeah.
brother-in-law loves it. I've watched it multiple times. It's great. The Bob Iger one is great. And
Mm-hmm.
again, if I took one thing away, it's when there's a list of things you need to see done, you can't go with a list of 6, 8, 10 things. You need to focus on two or three, and you need to pick the two or three that are most important, because you can't do everything.
Yeah.
And honestly, the next one is, and they debuted it back in the summer, Metallica. They have a master
Really?
class on it now. It's on music creation,
Hey.
but they get into like conflict and how to be creative and still have conflict as part of a band. They get
Mm.
it is definitely more toward the arts and creativity side of masterclass, because they've got photographers on there, they've
Yeah.
got writers on there, and other musicians. So it does go into a bit of like the music writing piece of it. But a couple things I lifted from that. Now, granted, I'm a huge Metallica fan, but they do get into how they divvy things up amongst the band, who starts with what,
Mm,
how they write music together as a team, how they resolve conflict when there's creative differences. It's honestly, it's a
interesting.
phenomenal.
I'll have to
Yeah,
check it out. I didn't even realize they had a masterclass on there.
yeah, it's good stuff.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, like kind of going back to what you were talking about, people think to tell a story to a prospect or even a client. Say you're working with a client and you're trying to resolve an issue, you see opportunity to grow the relationship. While it may seem lazy to focus on just the dry cold facts of like, we need to do this, we need to do that, honestly, if you boil it down to two or three things and wrap a great story in it, like, yes, let's go back to that example I just gave about like the the connection between two platforms and one being an email platform. Oh, okay. So right now you have to manually pull this data and upload it to your CRM to run your cart abandonment program, or you want to have a custom abandonment program. Well, here's how our system could solve that. So how many hours a week will that save you? Let's go back to the test drive example. Imagine what you can do if you weren't manually transferring data between two platforms.
And I'm gonna go, since you brought up music. Speaking of the how powerful story is, um, do you remember the story of Van Halen and the brown M&Ms?
Yes.
How boring would it have been if someone told that story and said, "Look, the Van Halen stage show is incredibly complex, and so in order for them to ensure the safety, they have this really robust checklist of things that they run through, and the rigging is have to be like blah, and go through all the technical details of it." Versus, so let me tell you a story about Van Halen being really needy about having to have M&Ms with no brown M&Ms in their dressing room. Like these guys would throw a fit if they didn't have brown M&Ms. And oh, by the way, the reason why they had that in there is because in their contract they said no brown M&Ms, and if the person reading the contract wasn't reading it at a detailed enough level to notice that, then we're worried that they don't have enough attention to detail to actually put our stage up in such a way that ensures which one is more memorable,
The
right?
latter, of
Yeah.
course.
And so I think, that's such a great example about the same exact thing, focusing. And again, I think it's really important that we avoid thinking about dumbing it down and missing the meat and skipping the details. That's not what this is about. It's about taking incredibly complex topics, and sometimes topics that can be incredibly dry, and finding a way to make them memorable by creating a narrative and a story around it.
Yeah.
um
And part of that too and part of it being memorable is that the story creates this familiarity and interest. It makes it interesting. Because you're right, like the Van Halen story, yeah, you're getting into the finer details of how they want the stage to be set up, the level of detail and the level of care they want with the stage, or the way they put someone to the test is if there's brown M and M's in the dressing room, what else didn't you do?
yeah. And not only that, it creates a shareability factor to it, which is also key to what we're trying to do from a sales perspective. So if we're droning on about like the features and we're just kind of going through the motions of the demo, how shareable is that versus telling a story that's engaging and is repeatable? Like, I may not have all the details of the brown M&M story, but I have enough to be able to go to my boss and tell him about the brown M&M story. The same with us in from a sales aspect, whether we're selling analytics software or services or something else. We want to sit down with our prospects and we want them to walk away with a story that they can then go retell to their boss or their boss's boss about why we need to hire 33.6 because let me tell you this story, dot dot dot, and they do the job for us. It takes someone like me that can't sell and lets me sell.
Yeah.
And it's
Well, I
an
mean, you
awesome.
bring up a great point about taking it to your boss, because ultimately the person that you're selling to has to get budget approval from someone else.
Yeah,
So think about it this way: if you're just talking about just dry features of a button does this, so much data per hour can be transferred. If I come to you with something and I say, yeah, they've got a great button. When you click it, I can do this, or I'm able to send X number of rows per hour with it. You're gonna be like, great, what does that mean?
hmm,
Whereas if I can come to you and say, with this tool, um, I'm going to be able to save on average 10 hours a week because they have this feature which automates these three things that I do manually every week. And I've already quantified that I do that. It takes me 10 hours a week to do. Again, going back to that example, the one of telling your prospect a story that they can then relate to somebody else, it smooths out a lot of it. It makes that it helps that person become part of your sales team as well. If you get them hooked
absolutely.
and they get excited about it and they can relate how this tool, how this service will improve the business, will improve their team, will improve the business, your chances of selling, of closing a deal have just gone up tremendously.
Yeah, and we're talking about, selling products or services to prospects, but the reality is that we're all in a sales position. So I'm an analytics manager, I'm a MarTech implementer, I'm an analyst. There's a huge sales component to what I do, right? I need budget for software. I need budget to properly grow out my team. I'm an analyst and I want to sell the importance of using data to make informed decisions to the business. That it's all sales, and
Yeah.
so that's why going back to Chris Voss and Never Split the Difference. I will, and I do recommend the book and the masterclass to everybody I talk to, because the one thing I learned, and it took me a long, long time in my career, but I finally got there, that every role is a sales role, and
Yeah.
even outside of business, just day-to-day life, we're all negotiating, we're all selling,
Yeah.
ideas, things, and what we're trying to get done. And so, if you're listening to the podcast and you're like, well, Jason, I'm not in sales, so this isn't pertinent to me. You are in sales, so let's just take the example of the analytics manager. And again, I've been talking about this quite a lot recently. Most analytics teams are underfunded and understaffed. So, as an analytics manager, I have to now become a salesperson to market and sell and lobby for why I need the budget to properly grow out my team. And if I'm just talking about benefits and features and widgets and things like that, not only is it going to be dull and boring, it's not going to be shared. I'm probably going to get a no. But if I can make it entertaining, if I can create a narrative and a story around it that is engaging my audience, then my audience is going to do the job for me. They're going to go and say, oh man, did you hear what Jason's building and this amazing stuff that we can do with this and that? And like, I've now have this whole sales force within my organization doing my job for me of selling. And I think it's part of the, I mean, there are many reasons why analytics teams are so grossly underfunded and understaffed, but not thinking of ourselves in a sales role is a big reason why that's the case, because we're doing a pretty poor job of negotiating and getting the budgets that we need. So if you're listening to this and you're in that position, I would challenge you to say, hmm, how can I put a storytelling wrapper around this? How can I be more entertaining and create something that's shareable with my ask, instead of just can I get the budget? Because like I really need another team member because my team is swamped. That's not memorable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, truth be told, well, as we were talking at the beginning about 2023 planning, yeah, part of it right now is I know I'm going to be coming asking for some additional budget for some new software and some training. So it's
Gonna
how
put your
do I?
skills to the test.
Yeah, exactly. I just can't come and say, hey, can I get a license that is going to cost several $100s to this? It's, why do we need it? What is it? How's it going to benefit? And how do we see ourselves using it? So yeah, no, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm in that exact position right now. You're right. You always are in that position.
So I'll give you a piece of advice that one of my mentors, Evan Lapointe, gave me yesterday. In that, when you're trying to do that, look for ways in which you can make it easy for the person that you're partnering with to say yes. So, create this memorable narrative story around what you're trying to do and talk about why it's going to make you more money, going to reduce your stress, going to make you more happier, going to be something really cool that you can play around with. And when you walk away from that, your goal should be really easy. That I entertain Jason so much, not just from the entertainment perspective, but with the facts that it's almost impossible for him to tell me no.
Exactly. Exactly. So as we start to wrap up this one, we're going to continue on the theme of story and get into some other aspects of it. So to wrap us up, what does all of this mean in the context of sustainable analytics? So bringing this back to sales, our space, digital analytics, and the concept of sustainable analytics.
I love that question, especially this week, because again, going back to what I just mentioned, we're all in a sales role, and if I'm sitting in a big enterprise and I'm sitting on top of years and years of tech debt, of overcomplicated martech stacks, of having tools on the shelf that we're paying for that we're just not using, I'm going to have to do a really, really good job of selling something that is not immediately visible. It's one of the reasons why so many projects in the analytics space get deprioritized or are defunded, because they're quote under the hood. Oh, you're just doing optimizations under the hood. Well, I can't see a shiny new paint job. I don't see really cool new window tint being put on there. It's something inside the inner workings of the car that I can't see. Therefore, I don't want to fund it. And so, in order to take what most companies are in, which is in an unsustainable state, and really pare that back and build something sustainable, you're going to have to do an incredibly good job of selling why I should be given budget for a project that's, quote, under the hood and not necessarily creating something flashy and new that the rest of the business can see, because there really is a lot of flashy and new the business can see, but that's not how we go to the table to ask for money, right? We say, well, we need to build this so that we, can do maintenance better and we're more efficient and blah, 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 blah. We have to do a much better way of telling a story around why investing in sustainable analytics, even though a lot of that investment is under the hood and not directly visible to the rest of the company, is something that should be a no-brainer for us to do.
Very well said.
And if all else fails, I'm gonna plug it one more time, and we got to put it in the show notes. I don't know if the individual clips are up yet. Um, I did that with our audience at the DHL Digital Analytics Summit. I could have just kind of done the features. And I think for that audience, they may have been like super interested, right? Like, Jason's talking about a lot of things that make sense to me. I understand it. This is meaningful. But I chose not to. I chose to tell a story, and I told the story of why we believe sustainable analytics is so important, by telling the story of the Lorax from Dr. Seuss. And use that to make it memorable. And so when people are now coming and talking to me about, hey, I watched your it was brilliant that you included the Lorax. That's what people are going to remember, right? Like, they're not necessarily going to remember all the details, but I guarantee you they went back to their bosses and said, you got to listen to this presentation from Jason. He talked about the Lorax and how it's related to analytics. It's awesome. That's shareable.
Yeah, I will definitely include a link to that.
Cool.
Uh, yeah, so this was one that I've been looking forward to since our episode with Stephen and Ashley a couple weeks ago, and the idea of story popped into my head, because it is like story is such a powerful tool, um, when when used and when employed properly.
Yeah. Agreed.
Cool.
And again, I think, this will be the last thing I say. If you've made it this far, thank you. And we're all in sales. We're all trying to sell something, and being able to do that through story is critically important. So don't write this episode off just because you're quote not in a sales role. We all do sales.
Yep. Very well said. Cool. All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap up there for this week, and we will catch everybody later.
See you.
See ya.